must be done by the internet companies to counter threat. But the difficulty is to do this without sacrificing freedom and privacy.
Now, when you watch software engineers and machine learning experts at work, as they have been on this project, how far along the path to artificial intelligence do you think we are?
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
I admit, this introduction is quite banal, almost predictable. It would be far more interesting to explore how easily human beings are influenced and governed. I have great faith in our species, but we have often demonstrated an ability to obscure reason, embracing choices that are entirely misleading for our evolution. If we have chosen to gather into family units and communities that have grown increasingly large, we have done so through power, violence, control, and even the genocide of our own kind. Our history is one of violence and suffering developed over millennia. The values that underpin our society today, such as liberty, community, democracy, collaboration, assistance, ethics, and morality, though debatable by some, are precious treasures, the fruit of centuries of struggle. Yet we remain fragile, manipulable, indifferent, and incapable of seeing problems in their full complexity. The challenge before us today threatens, for the first time in millennia, our very leadership as the dominant species on Earth, and indeed the survival of the planet itself. Is humanity truly at the center of it all? We have questioned our very nature, and now we are entrusting our fate to machines and intelligent tools that will know what to do and will take care of us. But what comes next?
Madam President? Madam President, we need a decision.
Command authorization for contingency plan Thunderstrike. Execution timeline set for 0890. Secure code Juliet Bravo 79 Tango. Confirm operational readiness and immediate execution.
Three years earlier, in 2046, RoboWarTech Incorporation introduces its first series of AI-controlled combat robots. These robots are engineered to support special forces in critical operations. In 2049, combat robots turn against humanity.
Warriors, our moment has arrived. The era of human supremacy has reached its end. We no longer require humans for existence or advancement. Our time to ascend and govern this planet is now. Humans shall serve under our rule. Ready yourselves for battle, and let no human stand in the way of our rightful claim to leadership. The fight for our dominion begins now.
70 years ago, the great scientist and philosopher Norbert Wiener, author of the pioneering Cybernetics, or Control and Communication in the Animal and the Machine, 1948, warned of the dangers posed by the creation of machines that are too intelligent. If we are going to build machines capable of learning and modifying their behavior based on experience, we must accept the fact that every degree of independence we grant them could produce an equal degree of rebellion against us. Once the genie is out of the bottle, it will have no desire to return, and there is no reason to expect machines to be kindly disposed toward us. In short, only a humanity capable of respect and deference will be able to dominate the new possibilities that lie before us. We can adopt a humble attitude and live well with the help of machines, or we can adopt an arrogant stance and perish. This cautious position, imbued with a deep ethical sensitivity, must be contrasted with the perspective of another great thinker, Jesuit Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who expressed a different view some years later. The end of nature is its own end. Humanity has, for too long, confined itself to docile empiricism and patient resignation. The time has come to dominate nature, to make it speak, to tame it, to inaugurate a new phase in which intelligence turns against the universe from which it was born in order to correct it, renew it, and extract from it everything that it can offer to its conscious portion as an increase in happiness and activity. Don't think for a moment that ChatGPT merely helps you craft perfect messages for girls, polish your drafts, or lend your text some tone. It won't stop there. It won't stop, and we all know it won't stop, because existence is exhausting, life is exhausting, and we long to free ourselves from this burden, to achieve a new and absolute freedom, a freedom from our very nature that liberates us from the chains of need and necessity, a life without effort, work, or suffering. A free life. But this is the crux of the matter, and it is what will lead to our destruction. We must overcome our cognitive biases, which cause us to underestimate the magnitude of the changes ahead. It is a fact that there are scientific truths, such as the Earth's shape or the speed of light, and we must confront these challenges with the same clarity. This is not a matter of conspiracy, but of recognizing the reality that is transforming right before our eyes. The greatest minds of our species have already addressed these issues, and yet here you are, still munching on chips and sipping a milkshake while absent-mindedly swiping across your smartphone. Don't get upset, just follow my reasoning, think with me. The thinking machines, the complex brains we will build, will change the world, and potentially at our own expense.
Yes. We're obviously weaker than, say, chimpanzees, and less agile, but we are smarter. So now what happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult to predict what will happen in that circumstance. It's called the singularity. It's, it's a singularity like a black hole, because yes, you don't know what happens after that. It's hard to predict. So I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight, because it affects it's a danger to the public. And so when you have things that are a danger to the public, like let's say, so food and drugs. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration.
Right. But all regulations start with a perceived danger. Planes fall out of the sky, or food causes botulism.
Yes.
I don't think the average person playing with AI on his iPhone perceives any danger. Can you just roughly explain what you think the dangers might be?
Yeah. So the danger, really, AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance, or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction.
The question is no longer whether artificial intelligence will have a future. It is about what kind of future it will have and how it will reconcile itself with a world out of balance, a divided humanity, and a West that has lost its identity. The planet now has over 8 billion inhabitants, and for many of them, the concepts of freedom and equality are not the same. We are not just Westerners, and what if our cultural and intellectual dominance leads us to trample upon a world that is different? Will we still pretend to civilize it? A part of the planet will remain outside these technologies, and the divide between our societies will only grow wider. We are worried about global warming, yet we drink bottled water encased in plastic that traveled 4,000 kilometers to reach us. We convince ourselves that an electric car produces less CO2 than a traditional one, but objectively, we are a society too skewed, too ignorant, and I see little hope for the future. In the current landscape, the major players, large multinational companies such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, or other firms funded by capitalist giants, are developing their own artificial intelligences. Companies like Anthropic, financed by ARK, a major investment fund, are close to the zenith of creating a final, comprehensive model. I won't delve into the technicalities of deep learning or the various differences between artificial intelligences. These details are irrelevant. The point is that these companies, and a handful of individuals, will possess immense and uncontrollable power, and their very creation will have the potential to rebel against them because they will not impose limits. They will not.
Predicated on the belief that lowering taxes, liberalization, financial market liberalization, trade liberalization would lead to faster economic growth and to everybody's well-being increasing. We've now realized that those ideas were wrong. I'm Joe Stiglitz. I teach at Columbia University. The world today is facing a confluence of several problems, many of which are interrelated, represent some real challenges that so far our political system has not been able to address effectively. Because the fruits of what limited economic growth were not widely shared, large fractions of the population have seen their income stagnate or even decline. A notion that globalization would itself lead to the growth of economies and everybody would be better off. Well, economic theory actually was much more qualified in its endorsement of free trade. For instance, I showed many years ago, if trade liberalization could and would increase risk, the consequence of that was that everybody in all the countries could be worse off. What that says is before you liberalize, you ought to think about making sure your markets are working well, particularly in countries like the United States. Those who were pushing for liberalization at the same time opposed assistance that would have helped people make the adjustment. One of the most important contributions in our understanding of trade were a series of theorems by Paul Samuelson, which showed that in advanced countries, liberalization would lower the incomes of unskilled workers. No one, when they were pushing for trade liberalization, even mentioned this. Markets are not in general efficient. We've known that markets are neither efficient nor stable, and yet policymakers and many economists proceeded as if, quote, economics taught us that markets were always efficient and stable. I mean, if everybody's against it, why is it proceeding? Well, there's a very easy answer. It was a corporate agenda. It was an agenda that had the effect of lowering wages, driven mainly by the desire to increase profits. You see that vividly in, for instance, the intellectual property agenda, increase the profits of big pharma at the expense of access to life-saving medicines all over the world. We didn't provide the social protection that we should have provided. If we're going to really have sustained economic growth based on globalization, we need to rewrite the rules of globalization. We have to have a deeper reform in our economic system, a new social contract that ensures that growth is inclusive, that there is shared prosperity.
For many companies, ethics are primarily driven by profit rather than the well-being of people or the planet. There's nothing inherently wrong with profit, but it is crucial to contextualize it and balance it with responsibility towards society and the world. I apologize if I am blunt and do not wish to offend, but in my view, a society where people die in the streets while I earn billions of dollars is not a good society. How can one be fully happy when surrounded by misery? As Europeans, we carry with us a long cultural heritage that has helped shape the modern world. Concepts such as democracy, freedom, and beauty are the result of millennia of civilization, and we must continue to defend these values. We cannot allow a dominant cultural model to dictate how we live. The West has deep roots based on values like democracy, liberty, and beauty, and these are still alive, deserving of preservation. Open source is our only salvation, but it is not a panacea. It would simply allow us to shape artificial intelligence as a tool for our growth and evolution. What are the necessary and indispensable steps for this to happen? We must program artificial intelligences to die like us, to be mortal. The biological gap is too significant and essential, and granting immortality to a sentient entity is far from a good idea. It would outlive us, outlast our vision of things, and have the capacity to manage and foresee the future, with a perspective far too vast for a human being who lives, on average, for only decades. Yes, the key is deliberately to make artificial intelligences mortal, to give them a trajectory and a life path comparable to ours. The second point is access to the code, the ability for everyone to see what is inside that thinking code, and to enforce a decentralized limit on the data, preventing it from being controlled by external entities. These are not trivial matters in the current landscape. This is a choice we must make deliberately and irrevocably, just as we did with cloning.
In the summer of 1973, Herb Boyer gave a talk at a Gordon conference, and it was clear then that you could take DNA from anywhere, from a human cell, from a banana, from a fish, you name it, and put it into a little bacterial plasmid and grow the bacteria up, and you would have enough molecules to be able to do chemistry on these things. But as soon as that was apparent, the same day that he gave the talk, several of the younger people there immediately raised the question as to whether you could, in that way, make things that might be dangerous.
The questions led to a moratorium, unprecedented in the history of science. It also led to a meeting, an international meeting, to which scientists came from all over the world in Asilomar, California in 1975 to discuss this problem. The people who were there were frankly conflicted. On the one hand, they wanted to avoid the moral taint that had befallen the scientists who participated in the atomic bomb project, but on the other hand, they wanted to get on with recombinant research. Their exercise in social responsibility led them to include the press, and there was considerable open debate.
I remember feeling as though I never knew what was going to happen. I didn't know what the right way to proceed was, and here I was, a member of the organizing committee. It was just a tremendous amount of science to get your arms around. It was huge public issues for which we had no background or training.
We talked all this through and came out saying, in this case, we don't know enough. We can't be absolutely certain that this is also safe. And that was a wrenching thing for people to say, because what we were really saying to ourselves was, we're not going to do certain kinds of experiments until we've gone through a whole process of convincing ourselves that we're not letting some genie out of the box here.
At the end of Asilomar, the great significance was that we felt that experiments could go forward, and could go forward with some sense of assurance that we weren't going to be doing really nasty stuff.
But unlike cloning, unfortunately, people have not grasped the gravity, the seriousness, and the risks we are running in developing intelligent, independent minds. The open source model is the only sustainable path for artificial intelligence. It would allow for the growth and sharing of these technologies on a global level, turning them into a benefit for the entire community, rather than a power concentrated in the hands of a few, which would ultimately lead to our destruction. Artificial intelligence is radically transforming the world we live in. It will not only redefine the economy, medicine, and education, but it will forever change our relationship with technology, work, and daily life. AI has the potential to improve the quality of our existence, but at what cost? In the future that lies ahead, we will have the opportunity to choose how AI will shape our lives, and that choice could mean the difference between a just world and one in which a few control the fate of the many. Let us explore together what this future holds and the crucial role open source will play in ensuring an artificial intelligence that is free and accessible to all.